Hi, and welcome to my podcast, the Fertility, Motherhood, and Wellness Show True Stories with Dr. Rajiv. Through this podcast, I will be dealing with issues related to fertility, safe motherhood practices, as well as women's health. Beauty, they say, is only skin deep, but it spawns an industry that's worth billions of dollars. And rightly so. After all, who doesn't want to look beautiful? Pregnancy is that special time when some things go right and some things just go horribly wrong. You're all excited about being pregnant and your life is going to change in so many beautiful ways. But with that joy comes a lot of skin issues. When you saw Kareena Kapoor pregnant in the movie Good News, she looked all glowing with luscious hair. And you suddenly find that pregnancy glow hasn't come onto you, or some skin changes seem to be happening with you. 1,000 questions start racing in your mind. And it is to answer all these questions of yours that we today have Dr. Jyoti Aneja here with us on this podcast on skin changes in pregnancy. So Dr. Jyoti Aneja is a celebrity dermatologist and hair transplant surgeon practicing in Mumbai for over 12 years. She's the medical director and the chief at La Grace Luxury Skin Clinic in Bandra West. She's also a visiting consultant at the Nanavati Super Speciality Hospital. Being an international speaker representing India in the world of aesthetic medicine, and a trainer with Allergan Medical Institute and mentoring hundreds of young doctors, she's also a passionate life coach, out to make a difference. Ladies and even men for that matter, you need to see her on Insta. If you aren't floored by her looks alone, then her work, her posts and reels, and of course her fan following will all collectively bowl you over. Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti, for agreeing to do this podcast with me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv, for this overwhelming introduction. I'm laughing, and this is an audio podcast, so I'm sure you can't see, but I'm overjoyed. Thank you so much for the kind words.
The pleasure is entirely mine. So let's hit it with all the questions. So, aesthetic dermatologist, is it an additional pressure being a cosmetologist to always look pretty, have flawless skin, and be just absolutely perfect out there for all your patients?
Well, to be fair, it's a professional commitment to look a certain way, because all your patients are looking up to you. Flawless? Well, I think we're all flawed in our own beautiful ways. But yes, I agree. I do put in some serious effort and I definitely follow what I preach.
Good. No, and it's showing. It shows on Insta, it shows in the real person. Absolutely. So, what kind of skin changes do you expect to see in the first 3 months of pregnancy? Because of less water intake, nausea, bad timings of food. Do you expect to see more acne in such women?
So now that you're pregnant, you're beginning to see many changes in your skin. And let's start on a good note with a sudden glow. But having said that, it depends. Many women experience these varied collection of skin changes that crop up during pregnancy. These could include mild rashes, redness, discolorations like glioasma, you've got linea nigra. I'm sorry for using technical words. I'm going to describe them as we go along. And obviously acne, like you rightly said, and other not so delightful eruptions like skin tags also. So many times, you'll have so many mothers to be come to you and say, I've got darkened armpits, I've got darkened in the thighs, and it does happen. So it's largely those pregnancy hormones at work, wherein causing your pores to secrete extra oil, making you more vulnerable to acne and rashes, especially on your face, your palms and your soles. And add to that your suppressed immunity and stretched blood vessels, you have a perfect recipe for surface inflammation. So now, as you said, we spoke about acne. Now, if you've experienced acne at any point in life before your pregnancy, you could swing either ways, honestly. It might clear up completely, or you might just experience some worsening of your acne. Not every pregnant woman will experience all the same skin changes, but what you should get ready for is new curves, new shapes, and a new skin too.
Very, very true. Very well said. So, with the coming of the second trimester, what are the kind of changes in the skin that we can expect to see? Do things get better? Do things get worse? New things coming up? What happens in the second trimester?
So, second trimester, I'd say we are a little more used to being pregnant. And while most women find the second trimester of pregnancy easier than the first, your abdomen will expand as the baby continues to grow. So be ready to welcome some stretch marks. There's going to be some darkening of your skin around your nipples, in your axilla. Again, like the linea nigra that I said, you may develop a mask of pregnancy onto your face. There could be an itchy abdomen. Your palms and soles may feel itchy because of the increased blood supply. And you could also notice some swelling of your ankles, your fingers, your face, which is more pronounced when you wake up in the morning, but it just goes down through the course of the day.
So you said we spoke about acne in the first 3 months, and it could happen because of a variety of reasons. Any tips you would like to give women who are battling this increased amount of acne in the first 3 months, what they could do to try and control that?
So absolutely important is stay hydrated. As much as nausea takes over in about 80 to 90% of women, especially when you're a primary and you're pregnant for the first time, it's very important to stay hydrated. Please steer clear from popping your zits. It's very tempting to pop your zits, but you do not have to touch your face. You are allowed to use some acne medications, which is like, a mupirocin ointment or a clindamycin ointment that can be applied topically only where you have your acne. So please go and consult your doctor. It's not that you're pregnant and you've got acne and there's no treatment that you seek for it. A lot of medications that we give for acne on a non-pregnant woman would probably be contraindicated while you're carrying the baby, but there's still quite a lot that we have in our basket that can help you battle your acne, and you don't really have to live through this all these 9 months.
Absolutely. Treatment is expanded so much, and as you said, refer to your doctor. But honestly, as a gynecologist, I only have that much of knowledge and information, and I always feel that there should be a team which is looking after every patient, pregnant or otherwise. There is a dermatologist who's looking after the skin, because those are things which I don't understand. There's a nutritionist, there is someone dealing with exercise, and so on and so forth. So someone as expert as you needs to be consulted to make sure that the patient does the right thing. Now, you mentioned words like linea nigra and cloasma. So for the sake of our listeners, could you just explain these terms a little more in details, please?
Sure. So linea nigra, or the pregnancy line, simply put, is a dark line that runs from your navel to your pubic bone. It's a physiological form of hyperpigmentation commonly seen in about the first trimester of pregnancy in, say, about 90% of women. And in most of the cases, it could be one of the earliest indicators of pregnancy. In old times, when some old lady would come see and just tell you, okay, how you're pregnant. So this was one of those signs, right?
Right.
And along with the darkening of this line, you may notice darkening of nipples and genitals also because of increased melanin synthesis. And if you ask me, all you young moms out there, there's nothing to be worried about. There is no treatment that's required. This line fades away on its own post-delivery. And the only 2 cents I have for you all here, though COVID restricts it for most of us, but if at all, sun exposure to the abdomen is to be avoided. Otherwise, this line could just become darker.
I think you said the most important thing in the end, that the line fades away in most people. That's what everyone I think would want to hear, that it goes away.
Absolutely. Cloasma, or the mask of pregnancy as we'd like to call it, is an acquired hyperpigmentation of the sun-exposed areas of the face that occurs in about 50 to 70% of the pregnancies that we see. It is a little less forgiving than the linea nigra, and it's most commonly seen around your cheeks, your upper lip, your forehead, or your chin in the shape of a butterfly. So this condition, though, is self-limiting. However, the spontaneous resolution of this is time-consuming. So if at all, you might just want to consult your doctor, and it's worthwhile to prevent the onset by strict photoprotection. You should wear a hat when you're going out, wear a physical sunscreen whenever you are stepping out, but make sure you are protected, because if this develops, it's an adamant pigmentation and it does give us a tough time.
But you say there are treatments available by which you could manage it post-pregnancy if at all it troubles women?
Yes, it does. So we definitely can help it. We definitely can lighten the pigmentation, but it does take a long time. And what happens is in a female's body, there's a lot of hormonal play that's happening all the time. So once your pregnancy hormones are taken care of, you are any which way is going to be on a constant roller coaster. So it's like a little tricky situation to manage, and it is a dermatologist's nightmare. So I would say prevention is better than cure.
Right. Another problem which really troubles women and plagues them during pregnancy are stretch marks. Would you like to throw some light on when do they start appearing and can we do something to prevent them?
Stretch marks. We call them the pregnancy stripes. These days, we see a lot of women flaunting them.
Right.
So when the skin stretches beyond its elastic limits, so your belly and the breasts, these are the two areas that grow the most. So that's the reason it's one of the most talked about skin changes that occur during pregnancy. But you may experience some stretch marks on your thighs, your buttocks, or your upper arms also. So like you rightly said, about 90% of the women will get them. I am not saying this to disappoint or dishearten you, but it's just the way our skin grows. And around your 6th to the 7th month of pregnancy, probably when you're really stretching, is when you notice some stretch marks. And if your mother has had stretch marks, chances are you'll more likely develop them too, because genetics does play a role. Now, moving on to what we can do to prevent them. So there's no bulletproof solution, unfortunately, but the best thing that you can do is keep the skin hydrated, like apply a lot of moisturizer, avoid hot water showers, make sure that you're moisturizing your belly. You've got these amazing belly balms and nipple balms that are available these days. So please make sure that you apply them generously at least twice daily and keep the skin hydrated.
One thing, Jyoti, which I've seen in women is women who've been exercising, very rigorously before pregnancy, and their skins are taut. Their skins are also more elastic. So it's about the skin. If it is elastic, will stretch during pregnancy without tearing, and it will stretch back again. So some of these women tend to have much lesser stretch marks than women who have not been exercising, and their skin isn't so elastic.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
And secondly, you said about the moisturizing bit. I always tell patients that, when a doctor or say anyone touches your belly or the areas where stretch marks may develop, it should be so well moisturized that the fingers actually slip off skin. It should be greasy, exactly. So well moisturized skin would probably reduce, definitely can't prevent them, but reduce the chances of having stretch marks.
Correct. So like you said, Dr. Rajiv, that's what we were trying to emphasize here. A stretch mark develops when your skin is stretching and tearing. It's like gaping of a cloth, how it happens. So it's the tear of the collagen and the elastin fibers underneath your skin. That's why the skin does not give away completely, but it just starts thinning out. It starts becoming paper thin in areas. So that's what we're trying to do. So when you're exercising, your skin is firm, the elasticity is intact. And in most of the cases, your skin may stretch enough, but sometimes, if you're looking at a twin pregnancy, like a multiple pregnancy and a primary woman, the skin may just stretch a lot. In those cases, stretch marks are pretty inevitable. But having said that, the best bet that you have at your end is to exercise well, keep your body toned and moisturize.
Right. Let's move on to hair changes in pregnancy. How do you see hair changes happening in pregnancy?
So you see more pregnant women than I do. I would say that if as for hair, it feels thicker, it looks amazing. Your hair is shiny, it's healthier than usual. It's probably growing faster too, But the downside of this hormonally triggered hair situation, in my case, I would say is you may suddenly sprout strands in places you'd rather not, including your face, your lower back. You may just sprout some hair around your areola, your nipples. Your abdoline might just have some dark pokey hair. But the good news again that I bring with me is, don't worry, most of the excess hair does fall out within 6 months of giving birth. And if not, we have the most sophisticated lasers to take care of that post-lactation.
Fantastic. There's always a silver lining in the end.
Totally, always.
So what about hair color? This is a very common question I keep getting asked all the time. So can women get their hair colored?
So interesting. Hair color per se, I would not say is dangerously toxic, but you should wait till the second trimester. You should. That's always a safer period in your pregnancy, I'd say. And whenever possible, select alternative treatments. Like rather than growing all global, speak to your stylist, get some streaks, get some highlights. And if you're choosing a hair color, go for safer options. So you can go ammonia free, bleach free. Tell your stylist to use like a semi-permanent hair color. Do not go like all out and go all blonde where they're bleaching your hair, exposing you to chemicals for a very long time. And there are other safer options also. Like these days, you get these natural vegetable dyes and you've got henna also. But another point now that you bring about hair color, I would just like to bring it to our notice. If we have any hairstylist mommies to be who are around hair color like very often, the best thing that you could do is make sure that you're changing your gloves very often. Do not touch your face or your hair with your gloves. Never eat around your workstation, and take constant breaks, and there should always be a mask on, because when you are constantly exposed to the hair color, when you're coloring it for yourself, it's going to be like once in 6 months affair. But when you're constantly exposed to hair color, there are these toxic fumes that are not good for you or the baby. So I definitely would like to say in that case, you need to take frequent breaks and absolutely no eating around your workstations.
That's excellently put forward, because we're always talking about the women who come to our clinics. We're never talking about the stylist who would be doing that job and may also be pregnant at some point in time.
Absolutely. No, but I would like to say, if changing your hair color helps you feel better, just go for it.
And what about things like laser hair removal, waxing of the underarms and legs, and say bikini waxing?
So while you're pregnant, laser hair reduction is an absolute no. But hygiene is paramount, pregnancy or otherwise. So it's totally safe to shave and wax your bikini underarms or legs. However, because of the increased sensitivity of your skin due to the hormonal changes, it just might make the procedure a little more painful. So I'd like to say stick to shaving in that case. And if it is a planned pregnancy, just get done with your hair reduction permanently, like well before time. It is really liberating.
So you would probably say stay away from the bikini wax as well.
So it's not a no-no. You definitely can do a bikini wax, but because of the increased blood circulation, doctor, usually, people find it very painful.
Okay.
So, if you want to just go easy on the pain, I would say stick to shaving.
Right.
But if at all you can, most of the women, we're brave, right? So it's not like the first time that we're doing it. It's a safe thing to do. You can go ahead and do it. No problems at all.
Right. What are the skin treatments that women should not be doing in pregnancy at all?
Well, so now that you're a mother-to-be, everything needs extra attention. From what goes into your body to what you put onto your face. A facial, I would say, can be done here and there, but you must avoid extensive heat treatments. Any devices that involve like a lot of electric currents, you should definitely not undergo injectable treatments like Botox, fillers, lasers, and I would say avoid deep chemical peels too.
What is your advice to women in pregnancy so that they can keep their skin healthy and glowing and Kareena Kapoor looking style, kind of a thing?
So while you're going to be blessed with a glowing skin, as in most of the cases, facials are a safe bet for expecting mothers. I mean, who doesn't like a nice aloe vera massage and some skin polishing here and there? Personally, I'd like to say hydrofacial is a great choice. And most importantly, I always tell all my patients, what goes inside reflects on the outside. So you got to eat right, you have to hydrate well, you have to sleep. Sleep is very important, and so is exercise, of course in moderation. And I personally am a big fan of yoga.
I've seen this hydrofacial on some of your posts. I'm really curious. What is it?
So hydrofacial basically is a mechanical device wherein we're just using water and oxygen, and we're just taking away the dead layer of your skin, infusing some serums into your skin for that nice healthy glow. So we've got multiple options. So obviously with pregnancy we do not use any thick serums or any heavy chemicals, but we do use some mild alpha hydroxy acids that just give you a nice hydration, exfoliate your skin also, and give you a nice healthy glow, followed by a nice LED therapy to just stimulate some collagen into your skin. So it's very relaxing. So the name hydrofacial makes it sound like a facial. It's more like a treatment. The name of the device is hydrofacial, but it's one of the top devices we have for glow and skin hydration.
Does it make older men look younger as well?
Wow, what a tricky question. Older men looking younger. That's my bread and butter. We just never let you grow old.
I'm coming to Mumbai.
Most welcome. Looking forward.
So, itching in pregnancy is again a very common problem. Itching again of two types. I've had women, or I have women all the time complaining of itching on the tummy, which of course we understand is because of stretch marks and localized thing. But general itching in pregnancy. So, why does it happen? And what can we do about it?
So there are many reasons why you may feel itchy during your pregnancy. I'll just try and elaborate a few reasons here. First things first is the stretching of your skin. So when the skin is stretching, like I earlier said, if it's your first pregnancy, if it is multiples, twins or triplets, you tend to stretch your skin quite a bit. Definitely makes your skin itchy. If the skin is dry because of the hormonal change that is happening in pregnancy, it can make your skin itchy, flaky, as well as dry. Now, because your sensitivity levels are super high, you could definitely react to the perfumes and even the best of fabrics that you've been wearing all your life. Different materials and chemicals can literally rub you the wrong way. As for hormones, we know. So there's a chemical cocktail that you experience in pregnancy which can affect anything from your mood to circulation. So yes, the itching also. So many times we have an underlying liver disorder that could give us some itching. Now, again, sorry for using a very technical term, but I do need to just bring it up. There's something called pruritic urticarial papules and plaques of pregnancy. We call it PUP. So now this is an itchy rash which usually develops around the stretch marks during your late pregnancy. And if at all this or a crusty, itchy, bumpy lesion develops around your arms and legs and torso, you need to make sure that you need to report this. So that being said, mild itching around your belly and your breasts, pretty understandable. But anytime you experience intense, prolonged itching, you have to report it to your doctor.
Right. We often get liver function tests done for these women, and we find the liver function test to be deranged. Absolutely. And then we have to give them certain medicines to try and bring those liver problems down. And then the itching quite often gets much better.
Right.
We were talking earlier about the hair and hair being luscious and thick and full in pregnancy and looking all beautiful. But we also know that post-pregnancy, there is a lot of hair fall. So can we talk about that, why it happens and what can we do about it?
So I always tell my patients, so you may love your locks right now, please do not get too attached to it. It's like, my hair transplant patients in the early few months, I tell them the same thing, and same goes for my pregnant women. I always tell them these good hair day runs are going to end with your delivery. And the reason, I'll just elaborate this for you, is when the normal daily hair loss that is suppressed during your pregnancy resumes, it only comes back with a vengeance. So while you're pregnant, you're under the effect of your estrogens and the progesterones, your hair is constantly in the anagen phase of your cycle, which makes it look thicker, it's stronger, it's healthier, right? So once you are, obviously the hormones start declining post the delivery of the baby, you will experience some hair loss. Once the baby is born, all the hair that did not fall out during pregnancy will. So this is called telogen effluvium. The resting hair falls. Right? So typically this lasts anything between 6 months to about a year's time. In some patients, it may last about 18 months also. And the only treatment though here is patience. There is no magic vitamin, and normally you get your pre-pregnancy hair in about a year's time. But if you feel you're shedding a lot with no end in sight, do speak to your doctor. Sometimes it could just be an underlying undiagnosed thyroid disorder or anemia, which when corrected could just solve your problem, And if you think that your hair is bugging you, just try a shorter haircut. Look at the brighter side. You've just made a new baby, demanding all of your time and attention. Your hair probably was anyways going to end up in a ponytail.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's also the vengeance of PCOS coming back because the ladies put on weight during pregnancy, aggravating her hormonal disorders of PCOS. The androgen levels have probably gone up and causing her a lot of hair fall post-pregnancy. So as you rightly said, if it's not going away in some time, which it normally should, then get in touch with your gynecologist, dermatologist, and they will know exactly what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Look, sometimes All you need to do is just run a couple of tests and we have a solution ready. So till you're lactating, any which ways there isn't an active treatment that's going to be involved, right? So we have to wait and watch. And by the time you finish lactating, which is about 6 to 9 months time, there are so many treatment options in the form of peptide sprays. You've got other creams and lotions that we can apply. We've got oral supplements we can put you on to. There are PRPs of the world that we can do for you. There is regenerative therapy. There's a whole bouquet of treatments that is available. So not to break your heart, first things first, hair loss does happen. I want to acknowledge it. Most of the cases, it goes back to where we started from. And if it doesn't, it can be helped surely.
Right. We also spoke about stretch marks of pregnancy a little earlier in the podcast. Can they be removed?
So Dr. Rajiv, like I had said that time also, when it comes to stretch marks, I'd say prevention is better than cure. And by that, I mean moisturizing well while you're pregnant. With the advent of latest lasers and microneedling devices, we can minimize the stretch marks to a great extent, but removing them completely would be an overalignment.
Right. Also, women who've had a vaginal delivery obviously have a natural laxity of the vagina owing to the dilatation of the vagina. 3 out of 5 women will also have urinary incontinence, that is, difficulty in holding back their urine, or incontinence happening or leaking of urine when they are coughing or sneezing or laughing later on in life. Can we do something about that?
Thank you for bringing this up and thank you for touching this topic. Stress urinary incontinence induced by childbirth can be quite devastating. For all these young women, imagine the frustration of involuntary leakage of urine while you're just sitting and laughing. Probably you just sneeze and you cough. But I must say, thanks to science, fractional CO2 lasers and the Avimag lasers, we now have safe, feasible and beneficial treatments for SUI which really work, and they're actually minimally invasive alternatives to surgical management.
So honestly, Dr. Jyoti, I'll bring out my experience in all this. I got to know about the CO2 laser a couple of years back, and the person who told me about it, she's my colleague from Manipal, and then she's now settled in Dubai. She's a huge advocate of CO2 laser, and it was costing a lot of money. And she kept pushing me, saying that it's really brilliant, take it. And I was like, look, cosmetic products, do they really work? I mean, half the time they are fancy, and I'm not too sure if it really is going to help, and it costs a lot of money to me and thus obviously to the patient as well.
Right.
But she was persistent and I picked it up. And it's been brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant. Women coming in with so much of anguish because of leaking urine. Women saying that we can't exercise, we can't go out, or even an urge incontinence where they keep talking about the fact that they need to be near a washroom all the time. They can't go out socially. And the moment CO2 lasers are used, I'm not saying that all of them do 100% brilliant, but most of them are, have such brilliant changes in their lives. They always come back so thankful.
Yes, it totally is life-changing. Agreed. Imagine, it's a young woman that you're talking about. And for that matter, I would say we need to credit it to the device. It is helping so many elderly women as well. While we're talking about
True.
SUI is something which is not so outwardly spoken in our country as yet, I would say. And so many women would not just come and complain about it. They would be suffering in silence, but they would just not be comfortable coming and speaking to you about it because they think there is something shameful and wrong with their bodies.
True. So let's now move on to the cesarean section scar. So obviously someone has had a cesarean section. There is a scar. Not everyone's going to have a brilliant scar at the end of it. What can be done to ensure that the cesarean section scar is, absolutely thin and nice looking and doesn't get seen too much later on?
I guess you should take this one because in my opinion, I would just say go to an obs guy who also has an aesthetic eye because there's much that your dermatologist is going to be able to do while you're getting into the OT to get opened and bring the baby out. So, that becomes a priority that time. We're really not looking at the size of the scar, but it actually depends upon the person who's doing it for you also.
To be very honest, I think it's a 50-50. Again, because I do these surgeries all the time, I found that some women tend to have a very nice toned skin. And when I'm suturing it back as well, the elasticity tells me that this woman is going to have a very good scar. Some of them have very lax skin. And those scars, no matter how much you try, does not come out very well. Of course, as you said, during the surgery, we do need to keep certain things in mind. The kind of sutures we use, how closely we give needle pricks, etc., does definitely help. The kind of stitching we use helps. But is there anything else we can do post-surgery? Like, for example, I use this ointment called Contract Tubex Gel
Yes.
to rub. Do these things really help? I mean, again, I give patients these silicone patches to put
Yes.
on the scar.
I was just going to talk about that.
Right.
So while the scar is still fresh, we've got these brilliant ointments that are available now that we use for our acne scar patients also, and the trauma scar patients too. So you need a nice silicone pad dressing. You apply these ointments twice daily, and after the scar matures, we can also subject it to some resurfacing with erbium mag laser or probably some microneedling radiofrequency that could also be done to help the scar in the long run. So the scar can be helped because it's not just a skin scar that we're looking at, there's also a uterine scar, so you don't definitely want to go beyond a certain depth.
Right.
But superficial scar reduction, I definitely feel we have quite an armamentarium and we can pretty much minimize the presence and the look of the scar. But again, the hero here is your operating surgeon, who should definitely help the dermatologist give us a scar in the first place.
Right. Coming towards the end of the podcast, some women tend to have a tendency to form a keloid.
Mm-hmm.
What is a keloid, and how do we prevent a keloid in a cesarean scar? If it does form, can we do something about it?
Okay, so good, we're bringing these two questions together. So simply put, when your skin is injured, there's scar tissue that forms over the wound to repair and protect the injury. So in some cases, like you said, there's a keloidal tendency. So the body just produces some extra tissue, right? And that grows, forming like a smooth or a hard growth around the lesion, the actual wound, which is called a keloid. So although they're not harmful to your health, but they do create a cosmetic concern because they are not the most pleasant looking scars that we have. And the way we handle it is we give you, like we said, silicone pad dressings. We have these Contract Tubex and the other cicatrix ointments that we have. There is always a pressure dressing. And if the scar is fairly fresh, we can always give like a mild dose of an intralesional steroid also to minimize the formation of the fibrous tissue. And once the scar matures, there's cryotherapy where we're essentially freezing away the keloid with liquid nitrogen.
Okay.
There is a laser option there too. Like I said before also, I'm a little reluctant because although it's an option, but it does have a risk of worsening the scar too because you have an underlying keloidal tendency. So when I am inducing a selective thermal injury onto your skin, there is a chance I might just give you another wound. So I'm not really an advocate for lasers in this case, but most definitely the silicone dressings and the creams followed by intralesional injections, if at all, could be considered.
Good option, yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti, for coming onto this podcast, highlighting so many different things. Pregnancy earlier used to be an event that mothers and mother-in-law said you have to be putting on weight, and don't worry if your skin is not looking so good. I mean, you're pregnant. I mean, be happy about it. It's all right if your hair is not looking good and you're having all the horrible things probably in this pregnancy. You're going to become a mother, so think about that and forget about all the other negative things. Gone are those days. Women really like to and want to and deserve to enjoy their pregnancy, and people like you are doing so much and bringing so much of information to women to make sure that their pregnancy is beautiful, not just in terms of the happiness of the baby coming in, but also because they're looking more radiant, they're looking more beautiful in terms of looks as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Rajiv. This was a pleasure. I hope you all helped with the information that we brought to you all. I would just like to leave on a note where, please understand, pregnancy is the happiest reason ever for feeling like crap. So it's totally okay if you don't feel good. It's totally all right if your hair is a mess. You're going to be overjoyed the moment you hold that baby in your arms. And I think it's all going to be so well worth it. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
So this brings me to the end of yet another podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. Thank you for all your reviews and suggestions. You're making my work so much easier and better. If you get a chance, do look up my website www.drrajivagarwal.co.in and the associated blog. I also have a YouTube channel in my name. Do email me on fertilitywithoutborders@gmail.com if you have any queries or if you want me to make a podcast on any topic of your choice. This podcast is available on Anchor, Headphones, Spotify, Breaker, Google, Overcast, Radio Public, as well as the Apple Podcast. Do subscribe to any one of them or on Apple Podcast and leave your comments and suggestions. Looking forward to great interactions. Keep listening.